Today we will be discussing a few chapters within the marveling literary work, How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster. This describes major trends and patterns found within novels of all eras for beginning readers. Today we will not only be talking about symbolism on a general scale, but we will be discussing the meanings and implications behind violence in literature.
Let's get into the lesson. Violence is one of the most personal and even intimate acts between human beings, but it can also be cultural and social in its implications. It can be symbolic as well as thematic, and can be found in literature that dates back to Shakespearean times, Romantic times, and even biblical stories. As stated by the author, there are two ways to interpret violence in literature. The first is to determine the specific injury that authors place upon characters to put a point across about their moral being. The second is narrative violence that causes characters harm simply to advance the plot.
Even if some instances may seem gory in detail, violence is extremely symbolic. It doesn't always mean hatred towards something or someone. It could be to develop character, prove one's worth, and it can have romantic implications. As discussed in the chapter, a large majority of violence in literature has to do with either winning the affection of, or even stripping away the virility of a young female. This toys around with the theme of loss of innocence, as well as the use of violence to ward off competing interests. In the advancement of these plots, violence is used to get rid of blocking elements, like a competing male or female.
A famous example of this can be found in the Shakespearean play titled Romeo and Juliet. Essentially, this entire novel is a great example of love and violence. But a major point that is crucial for the plot to advance is that Paris, a competing love interest, must be done away somehow.
Sadly, it didn't work out for Paris, Romeo, or Juliet.
Societal issues such as classism and racism can be expressed through violence as well. In the book To Kill a Mockingbird, Tom Robinson is shot 17 times and killed. The trial was completed, but he was hopeless and made a run for it. He was killed not necessarily because of the allegations, but simply because he was a black man and he ran.
The death and the violence of what occurs makes the audience feel sympathy not only for Tom Robinson, but his entire family and the entire African American community. This act is personal and literal, but it is also a powerful metaphor regarding the horrors of racism during the 20th century in America.
Violence can be found in literature through the accidents that the characters must work through to advance the plot.
This means that every car accident, fire, or other natural disaster was purposefully placed there by the author to advance the plot. Now we know about the symbolism found in violence, but what are we to say about symbolism in general? Where can it be found, and what can it say about a certain plot or a certain character? Foster states in his chapter concerning symbolism that nearly everything, including objects, colors, weather, handicaps, places, actions, characteristics, failures, successes, landforms, and a multitude of others, is a symbol. But the concept that is most difficult for new readers to understand is that the meaning of each of these symbols is entirely up to the readers themselves.
First step is interpreting them is that we must understand that things usually do not stand for other things on a one-for-one basis. The chapter extensively discusses the symbolism of caves in A Passage to India by E.M. Forster. But let's show you an easy example using the Disney Pixar movie Up. In this example, we will be using Foster's lesson to interpret the symbolism of a well-known story.
Carl Fredricksen, the movie's main protagonist, is an old man. His age symbolizes a growing lack of mobility and independence, which is highlighted when he is required to move to a retirement home. The exposition of the movie builds upon the fact that his sense of adventure was inspired by his childhood love, Ellie. The death of this woman and her inability to have children earlier in life seriously inhibited his sense of fantasy, as well as his positive outlook on life. And this was worsened when it seemed that everything he built with his wife was being taken away from him.
He looks back fondly to when he saw life through the eyes of a child. Everything was more exciting. This is why it was so heartbreaking when he could not have children himself. This is also the reason why he uses balloons as a mode for his transportation, to explore a part of himself that he had not revisited since he was married to Ellie. By lifting his house off its foundation with the colorful balloons, he is taking control of his mobility. Despite his age, the balloons represent his desire to relive his childhood and reconnect with his late wife.
Example, as well as the one provided in the text, proves that audiences cannot simply approach plots at face value. Once they learn to dig deeper, they will build more of an emotional connection towards all of the characters.
The author closes by stating that reading is an event of our imagination. Our creativity encounters that of a writer. By reading, we are engaging with the inventiveness of the author.
These chapters provided readers with amazing advice. Each and every one of us must pay attention to what we feel about the text, as it probably does mean something.